I want to talk about this idea of the dangers of too much money. First thing you might be thinking, oh, that's crazy. How could you ever have too much money? How is that bad for you? I'm going to be arguing that it's bad for you because it's heightening the ego, and that's bad. To understand this, we have to first discuss the idea of peace. Peace is something that we all would thoroughly enjoy. I think it is more important than happiness. One who is at peace are not in the cycles of happiness, sadness, happiness, distraughtness, and so forth. They're out of this sort of Buddhist hedonistic treadmill. We're not in the cycles of ups and downs, and therefore we're in a constant equanimity with ourselves. And so peace is important. And how do we get peace? Peace will come from, one, understanding the reality of the world more accurately. And the thing is, the world, and seeing the world accurately, goes down the more our ego goes up. The more we think we are more important than we are, the more we will think that the world is not the world itself, but that it revolves around us. We will not think the world is perfect as it is, but rather things that are dependent upon us, that need to show our superiority. And this misaccurate perception of the world will cause us to just have more troubles with it. In a sense, we're pushing against the currents of the world more fiercely than if we were to have a sort of lower ego. And this is something we should be really careful of, because if our egos get heightened, in a sense, our peace can be threatened. And a classic example is that really rich people, or people who have a lot of things so they can feel entitled, will have these massive egos and where they think everything revolves around them. They are very important in the world. But it is precisely that these people will be less in touch with the world. They will perceive the world in a more sort of inaccurate way of things revolving around them, and they're unable to be kind of seeing the world as it is. And the reality is that there is no way that the world can ever revolve around us, right? If you just think about this sort of scientifically and objectively, we are tiny specks of dust in the universe. And while we understand that intellectually, we have to actually understand that phenomenologically. If we don't understand that from a bottom-up perception point of view, we are not going to put together our intellectual side and this perceptual side. They'll not be matched. And if they're not matched, we're not going to be at peace. And so, if you gain a lot of money, if you start doing something that heightens your ego, you should be incredibly careful of the consequences of that. With most cases, when people get more money, the ego will naturally increase because your status increases. And if people look up to you more, and if you're getting more praises by people, you're naturally going to start thinking you're better than things, and you're better than what you think you are. And so that's dangerous. You should be very cautious of it. And just for comparison, this is why spiritual people have to have low egos. If you're spiritual and you have a high ego, you're not really doing spirituality well, because the whole point of spirituality in some sense is to kind of find your way and alignment with the reality of the universe, which is really hard to do if your whole perception is sort of messed up in the first place. So spiritual people who are questioning this idea of who we really are have to have low egos, because it is precisely low egos that will allow them to perceive the world in a more accurate representation. So that's something to think about.